85. Shabbos Parsha Zachor, which is this Shabbos. Also the Shabbos Parsha Zachor, also Parsha Tetzaveh. Zachor Shas Lacham Molech B'derech B'tzeis Mitzrayim Asher Karcha Goymer. We read in the Torah about that you have to remember what Amalek did to you on your way going out of Mitzrayim. That he met you, v'ata oyev yagea, you were thirsty and tired, v'liyada lekim, you did not fear Hashem, v'hoya b'niach goymer, and then it shall be, when Hashem relieves you of all your enemies, timcha zecher Amalek metaxas shemayim, you should eradicate any memory of Amalek from under the heavens, loy tishkach, do not forget. It's known the analysis of this in the Amorim of Arabim. Harnesiim matam oisim rash gadol kol kach azash turim me'inyan melchemes Amalek yoser misharomas. What's the reason that we make such a big tumult from the war of Amalek more than all the other nations? Though also about the 7 nations that were in Canaan, it also says, do not allow anyone to live, because we're worried that the nations will make the Yidden sin and follow Avodah Zarah. So, therefore, in a similar vein, still in all, specifically by Amalek, it says that you should remember what he did to you. Not only do you have to remember, whereas by the other nations you're not commanded to remember to destroy them. Another thing is the way we eradicate Amalek has to be a complete eradication. Or a zecher Amalek, you should surely eradicate the memory of Amalek. But both pronounced both ways in Minig Chabad when they read from the Torah, Zecher B'Segel and V'Zecher B'Tzeirei. They read it in both vowelizations. V'ad D'Isa V'Medrish Lo Yeh Shem Amalek Niskar Afil Al Behema. The name of Amalek should not even be mentioned on an animal. By the other nations, it doesn't say you have to kill off and destroy all their possessions, but when it comes to Amalek, even an animal can't be remembered. There can't be any memory of Amalek. To say, you know, this animal, we got that from Amalek. Gamel zeh shel Amalek. This camel was from Amalek, etc. So therefore, till you even find a Jewish custom, even the name of Amalek that's mentioned on an inanimate thing, you erase it. That people used to write the name Amalek or the name Haman, they would write on their shoe and stamp it out and erase it. So we see how severe this idea is to completely eradicate Amalek from any type of thing. That's one question. Also, we have to understand what it says that he attacked you on your way going out of Mitzrayim. In a different pasuk it says, on the way Mitzrayim, when he went up, when the Jewish people went up from Egypt. What's the connection? Why do we emphasize this was on the way leaving Mitzrayim? What's the association? During the Eden leaving Mitzrayim, there was a very great revelation until Hashem revealed himself in his glory and his essence and redeemed them. The King of Kings of Hashem, like we say in the Haggadah. What's the connection of Amalek specifically with this great event of going out of Mitzrayim that it's emphasized about that when did Amalek attack us? When we went out of Mitzrayim. And also we need to understand what's the idea of eradicating Amalek in the spiritual sense? Especially so, it was only very few times, very few times was the actual the fight against Amalek in the physical world. In other words, other mitzvahs, even though all mitzvahs have their spiritual side, but they are constantly done. So you could like remain with the physical thing. A mezuzah, you always have a mezuzah on your door. You always daven, you always study Torah, etc., etc. Shabbos is kept every week. So of course there's a spiritual side to it, but there's not such a big question, what's the spiritual side of this? But Amalek takes place once every few thousand years, as we'll soon explain. If it's so rare, obviously, if we're making such a big deal about it, and even if we're not making a big deal about it, but if such a rare mitzvah must have a spiritual component that we need to understand. So the Rebbe is going to enumerate the times in history where there was the fulfilled, or we had a war against Amalek. Like it says in the Pasuk, and it will be when Hashem will relieve you from all your enemies around. Once you've taken care of all the enemies, that's when you fight Amalek. It's very interesting. Amalek is so terrible. Fight him first. Fight him while you're fighting other enemies. No, Hashem said, for whatever reason, when you take care of all the other enemies and things are quiet, things are calm, now you can go ahead and take care of Amalek. The Pam Achas Ha'in Shol, once this took place in the days of Shol. And the Lifnei prior to the days of Shol, Yeshua was the story with Moshe Rabbeinu and Yeshua, that the end of Parshat Beshalach, where he talks over there about fighting against Amalek. That's only twice, up till our time. Upam Shlishis, and the third time when we will fight Amalek, Yibedara de Malka de Mashiach, will be in the generation of King Mashiach. The Targum Yonason, who is not just a translation, but he's also a commentator, says on the Pasuk in Parshat Beshalach, where it says that there's a war of Hashem and Amalek from generation to generation. So he says that the generation that it's referring to, the second Doir, is referring to the Koi Gamal Dor of the Mashiach, is referring to also to the generation of Mashiach. The Mashiach will eradicate Amalek. This demands an even greater explanation. Only 3 times in history will we be fighting, had we fought, and will we be fighting Amalek? What's the reason for warning us? Remember what Amalek did to you. And we repeat it. It's not just enough to remember, but you can't forget. Since this is part of the everlasting Torah, moving it's understood. This is an ongoing, an everlasting lesson in the avodah of Hashem constantly, every single day. And especially so since we say it in the Sheish Zechiris, we actually repeat it every single day. At the end of the davening, it enumerates 6 different remembrances. And one of the remembrances is Achshas Amalek. Having calls out to be able to understand all of this concerning the war of Amalek. See, it says, he attacked all those that were straggling. Acharecha. The emphasis over here is behind you. Or, like he's going to explain, those that had to do with the back. Those that their service to Hashem was in the level of a charaim. The war of Amalek is in the level of the back. When a person's service is only with their back. What does that mean? It's now on the hefresh bein ponim lacharaim. What the difference between the face and the back is. Though a human body, even from the back, also has 248 limbs and organs and 365 blood vessels and capillaries and sinews, etc., completely, just like the front of the body. In the front of the body, over there is the revelation of the inner part of the person. Over there, the limbs and organs are more recognizable, like all the different organs of the face and so on. As opposed to the back of a person, over there, the inner aspect of the person is not revealed. Is only the external. So in the service of Hashem, when our avoida is no way of just chitzonius, that's only external, from this can become those that are nachsholim acharecha. So the explanation of the word nachsholim is that the shin and lamed can be exchanged positions. It's as if it said nachloshim. The nachsholim hu loshin chalishus. The word nachsholim is the word weakness. Va'ad lechalishus sheba chalishus, until a level of weakness of weakness. Another way of expressing it is hu inyan hashina. It's the idea of sleep. Just like when a person's asleep, he's fully alive. Still in all, the life and vitality that's in him is a very tiny amount. The greater soul powers are not manifest. His intellect, his emotions, none of that is manifest. He's just a functioning body for the physicality of the body. So too, it's in the person's service when he's in a level of nachsholim. It's considered that he's like asleep. He's sleepwalking through Torah mitzvahs. Though he's doing his service and all the 248 positive commandments and the 365 negative commandments, that's just like we said, the back of the person has all the organs and limbs and sinews and capillaries and blood vessels complete. But still in all, mikol makim, it's considered the back, it's considered weak, it's considered like sleep. It's done in a way that this is what the habit that a person has, without vitality and energy and excitement. Not only that, he fulfills the mitzvah of remember what Amalek did to you. Not just he remembers by saying the words, like we said, he says the words of the Chassidus, or when he hears the Torah reading, it's hearing from the Torah, it's like saying it. Elegam he fulfills it also in his heart. Not only does he listen to Parsha Zachor from the Torah, but he also thinks the meaning of the words. He's listening to what's going on. But even then, it could be nachsholim. Even then, it could be like he's asleep. The mitzvahs, that's still on the way of doing it by habit, like a person does something out of habit. For this reason, it says that the Kehanim, when they brought in the Beis HaMikdash an offering of different types of birds, they didn't shecht it like normal shechita takes place, where you shecht from the throat, but rather they cut off the head with their fingernail, with their thumbnail, from their neck. So a molak means the splitting of the head from the body and from the neck. The neck is also the back. The Inyan HaMalika that idea of malika that the Kohanim did is from the back of the neck, or the back of the throat, which is the neck, not like when you slaughter an animal for consumption. How come? Why is Amalek related to the word umalak? Because how does Amalek grasp and get hold of a Jew? How does he attack a Jew? When a Jew's service is in the way of the back. Is when a person's service is without excitement. He's doing it from the back. So then Amalek comes and wants to cut the head off of the body. Just like in the simple, literal sense of Malika. It's the separation of the head from the body. So too it's the idea of Amalek to separate between the head and the body. What does that mean spiritually? The Inyan HaRosh B'Avodas Hashem Hu HaSeichel V'Avon V'Azbor. The idea of the head in the service of Hashem, that's intellect and that's understanding and something that's explained and very well understood. According to the appropriate order of things, the head is the way it's supposed to be. That he's supposed to run the body. He's supposed to influence all matters of the body. Until the power of action is in the body. Because action is what is primary. So therefore, that's a normal body that the head and the body are attached. Through the Malika process, we make a separation between the head and the body. Though the body is complete, it's whole. And the head is complete. There's no connection, there's no communication between the head and the body. The way the head contemplates and understands, that does not influence and affect how the body runs in its entirety. That was what Amalek was about. He wanted to affect in the Jewish people the separation between the head and the body. That the meditation of the head should not influence the way the body is run. Until it says that he would attack the zonov. Vayizanav is the word zonov, meaning tail. Not only does he separate the head, he made in you a level of a tail. He made you the furthest thing from the head, as he's going to explain. The zonov, the tail is the lowest thing, that there's nothing lower than it in the body. It's a known expression of Chazal. When the Chazal want to describe two matters that are not comparable one to the other, we give the example of a head and a tail. So we see that this was what Vayizanav B'cha is the worst, lowest level. It's not just that that is just something ancillary to the rest of the body or ancillary to the head, but it's lowest, that there's nothing lower. That's the idea of a tail. And that's what Amalek affected in them, that they should become a level of a tail completely on the opposite side of the spectrum of what the head contemplates. He's a tail, he has no connection to it whatsoever. And this itself, what Amalek affects the Jewish people, there are many components and aspects. The Amalek Amalek brings coldness in the service of the person. It should be without any passion, excitement, and vitality whatsoever. He does it indifferently. Like it's brought down the Medrash, where it says that he met you in the way. Karcha is from the word meeting, but also it's from the word kar, meaning cold, that he made you cold. Another thing that Amalek is known to do, v'gam Amalek b'gematria safik. Also, the word Amalek is the numerical equivalent of the word safik 140. 240. Shebal matel sveikis bedaitoy. Amalek comes and brings doubts into the person's mind. Until betachlis ayidid Amalek, until the ultimate descent of Amalek ubchinas hadas del umaza, that the level of Sfiras Hadas in Klippa, that is what Amalek represents, as opposed to the 7 nations correspond to the 7 midos of Klippa, Chesed of Klippa, Gvura de Klippa, and so on. Amalek is the level of Das de Klippa. What's the idea of Das de Klippa? Let's look at the other side. Das de Kedusha has to do with giving birth. As we know from Chochmah Bina alone, the midas don't come into being. It's only when you have Das that das is the joining between the intellect and the emotions to make sure that the emotions are born from the intellectual meditation and contemplation. But das of Klippa is just the opposite. The Alei Itmar concerning das of Klippa of Amalek, it says, Keil Acher Istaris V'loi Ovid Peirin. It's a foreign god that becomes impotent and does not give any fruits. It does not become fruitful. It affects and influences that should be the opposite of birth of Kedusha. So that is all these different things that Amalek has to do with. Based on what we understand now what Amalek is about, we can understand the connection with going out of Mitzrayim. 2 lines on the bottom of the page. With this will be understood why the war of Amalek was specifically at the time when they went out of Mitzrayim. Though at the time of going out of Mitzrayim, there was a very lofty and high revelation until the revelation of Hashem's very essence, like it's known, the explanation of the Rebbe Rasha, Beloshen, where it says in the Haggadah, it was only Hashem in His glory and in His essence. The Bechvoidoi Hi Malchus Dein Sof. His glory is referring to the level of Malchus, of the infinite, before the Tzimtzum, before the whole Seder Shtalshlus. Uba'atzmoi Hi Tiferes Dein Sof Shlifnat Tzimtzum. And Atzmoi is going on the level of Tiferes, the spheres of Tiferes of the infinite before the Tzimtzum. So it was an amazing, unbelievable revelation took place when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim. Mikol Malkim still, and all the problem with that revelation was this revelation was only from above. It didn't come about through the person's service of Hashem. Therefore did not permeate in the person on his terms, from his perspective. It says that took you out of the land of Mitzrayim, that the leaving Mitzrayim was only because Hashem did it. It wasn't that the Yidden pulled themselves up out of Mitzrayim. Like it's explained in Tanya. For this reason it says in Yetzias Mitzrayim that Pari claimed that the nation ran away. And Alter Rebbe asks, why did Moshe Rabbeinu have to lead Pari the thinking that the Yidden are going to return? So it wasn't because of Pari. Pari would have sent them free, when, especially after Makas B'choros, when he thought that he wasn't going to die himself, he was going to let him go for good. But the problem was with the Nefesh Habamis of the Yid. Because the bad within the Yidden was still in its force. Yidden were there then in a state of a minor level of belief. The level of the back. They didn't have the internal commitment yet. That's why it says that the war against Amalek took place when they went out of Mitzrayim. Because specifically, the way they went out of Mitzrayim, that they weren't transformed, they were susceptible to Amalek. If it would have been in a much later point in time, when they had become transformed, then Amalek couldn't have attacked them. Second paragraph on the page. According to this, will be understood why this is said specifically by Amalek, and not by the 7 nations. The Chsiv Behudar, it says by them, like the Chaya Kol Neshama, you should not let any soul live, like we said before, that specifically by Amalek, we have this command, you should remember and do not forget. What does that mean? Because the 7 nations, as I mentioned before in passing, that the 7 nations correspond to the 7 character traits of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes of Klippa. Even someone whose service concerning the conquering of the 7 nations is complete, is perfect. He did his job over there. he conquered his entire 7 character traits. In such a way that he let no soul live. His service in his thought, speech, and deed was perfect. Like we said before, that's what we said before, that when the head is separated from the head is a complete head, and the body is complete, meaning all of his emotional levels that has to do with the trunk of his body, with the heart, they're perfect. Nothing's missing. Even though he has all the emotions in the right place, it's still possible for Amalek to control him. Because the lack of his vitality, passion, and excitement, Amalek influences that the head is separated from the body. This is also what's brought down in Medrash, Moshel Amalek, and a metaphor for what occurred. Why did Amalek attack at that particular time? It's analogous to a person that was that he had his son on his shoulders, and they went on the road, and the son, whatever the son asked the father for, he saw a beautiful tree with some fruits, he asked him for it, the father gave him, and so on and so forth. So they met up with someone. So the son turned to that person they met on the way, and they said, "Did you see my father? He's riding on his father's shoulders, and he's asking the stranger, 'Did you see my father?' You don't know where I am." All of his father threw him down, and the dog came and bit him. That was Amalek. What does this indicate? The Rebbe gives a deeper explanation of this metaphor that the Medrash uses. Even from this, it's indicated that this is also referring to someone that the service of Hashem is complete. He's even riding on the shoulders of Hashem. And this place, this level, Amalek comes, and he throws doubts into the person's mind. Where is the father, etc. The reason why Amalek can come and to make the person cold and to make him have doubts, etc. Even someone that we said before, his service, his 7 emotional traits are perfect, because Amalek is a chutzpah without a crown. There's a king has chutzpah, but he has reason to have chutzpah because he's wearing a crown. The same thing when a person has chutzpah because he has reason to hold himself high. He's intelligent, he has this, he has that. But Amalek is a chutzpah without a reason. There is no justification for his chutzpah. Not that at any time chutzpah is right or gaiva is right, because the person has to realize that he has gifts from Hashem that gave him intellect, gave him other things. But even after that, Amalek is literally without any reason. So he says, this is also what's brought down the Medrash, that Yisro and Amalek were 2 opposites. From the very fact that the Medrash says that they were opposites of each other, if you're saying that they are opposites, that itself indicates from this is indicated that there's some connection that in some way they are opposites. So the Rebbe is going to explain what's the similarity that we're saying that they're opposites. According to the above, it's understood. Why was he called Yisro? You have this in Rashi, because he added an additional portion of the Torah when he came and advised Moshe Rabbeinu about appointing judges so he doesn't tire and so on. This means that Yisro adds in Torah. As opposed to Amalek is the very opposite of this. Even someone that's involved in Torah mitzvahs, Amalek comes and throws doubts into him. So instead of adding, he detracts. Third paragraph on the page. This is what it means. Remember what Amalek did to you. The manner of warring and battling in the level of Amalek is through the mitzvah of remembering Amalek. Like it's explained, the moyach hazikaron hu moyach hachachma shalomaylo moyach. The part of the brain and the intellectual capacity that has to do with memory, that's the level of chachma that's higher than the section of the brain that has to do with bina. Like it's known what it says, there's no forgetfulness before your throne of glory. It's explained about this in Mamorim and even in the laws of Talmud Torah of the Alter Rebbe. The idea of forgetfulness is only from the world of the throne and below. The kisei, whose spheres habina, as Chassidus explains, the level of the throne, that has to do with spheres habina. It says that the world, the idea of the chair or the throne, that's the world of Bria. Bria has to do with bina. It's already like when you sit down in a chair, you become settled. Bina is taking the idea and settling it down because you're breaking it down into parts and you're making it understood. As opposed to chokmah, it's a level of memory. So that's why it says, Ein shikha lifnei kisei chivadecha. Lifnei means before, not just before as in the presence of, but before as prior to kisei chivadecha. Higher than the level of kisei, higher than the level of bina, there is no forgetfulness. That's where it says, remember, do not forget. We need to draw down from the level of chachma. Through drawing down from the level of chachma that's in the head. Through this we nullify the effect of Amalek to separate the head from the body. That's the special power that chachma has to influence and to affect that you shouldn't have that type of attack of Amalek, because chachma does not allow for that separation to take place, because chachma has to do with panimius, etc. Top of the last page. Through that we come to the completion and perfection of going out of Mitzrayim, because Yetzias Mitzrayim was only one step to lead us. The completion of Yetzias Mitzrayim was when we arrived in Eretz Yisrael. The Chsiv, like it says, Allah eschem ma'ani Mitzrayim el Eretz Toiv v'Rechava goymer. I'm taking you out from the land of Mitzrayim to lead you to a good and broad land. Ya'idei bitulish Amalek, was through nullifying Amalek. Boy, macharkel madrege shalomaylo ma'yitziam in Mitzrayim shivchines iskafi lovat. We come to a level that's higher than going out of Mitzrayim. That going out of Mitzrayim is only a level of sublimating and subjugating the klippah, that over there Amalek could still approach, because when you're sublimating the klippah, it's not necessarily in a way that we have passion and vitality. We're doing it with acharayim, we're doing it with the back, we're doing it out of habit. Going to a good and broad land, that's the inyan of Ishapcha, that's where the klippah is transformed, where the excitement and the pnimius is there. So too it's concerning the remembering of Amalek and the war of Amalek. That's every single day in the service of a person. When a person arises from a sleep, he becomes a new creature. Therefore he begins the service by reciting Moidani. We recite this at the beginning of the day, at a time where we're not permitted to mention Hashem's name because we didn't wash Negelvasher yet. At that time, his soul did not yet expand and spread out in his entire body. Chazal say that prior to davening, the neshama is still in his nostrils. The ain't a totally ba'adam. This is not something that it's the person's fault or anything. This is the way things are. That the neshama is still in his nostrils because it didn't yet expand in his entire self. This level where the neshama did not yet expand, that is the minor form of belief that's at the beginning of a person's service, similar to the minor belief that took place when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim initially. Afterwards, he has to do his service of Hashem in the service of davening. Shas Loisa, Shas Krova, the Zohar says, the time of davening is a time of battle. During davening, he prepares himself to the war of refining the sparks that's in the world. What's the refining of the sparks in the world that takes place after davening? Achila kipshuta, literal eating. But not only he's dealing with the war of refining the sparks that has to do with literal eating, during davening he prepares himself for the milchama, the war of refining the sparks, by his service in Torah study. Because Torah is also called bread, like it says, go eat bread with my bread. Which is, in other words, there's the physical bread that a person needs to be mevar birudim, and he's prepared by davening for it. And then there's the spiritual bread of Torah learning. How does one's davening influence their Torah study? Through appropriate meditation and contemplation during davening, he arrives at such a stage. That is, Torah study is the way it's supposed to be. Like we said before, the head, he's studying Torah with his head. It influences his body. And then his service is out of excitement, etc. Afterwards, it comes to the conquest of the good and broad land. What land does every person conquer on a daily basis? This is the miniature city, which Alter Rebbe calls in the Tanya, he calls the body a miniature city that two kings are warring over it, in Nefshel Kis and Nefshel Bamis. He makes out of the little town, the little city, that instead Hashem should be great and very praised in the city of our God. In other words, this city over which Nefshel Kis, Nefshel Bamis battle over becomes Hashem's city. And then from making his body into Hashem's city, he draws this down into his portion of the world and the entire world. And the Rebbe concludes with a bracha, and through the avoid in all these matters, in such a manner, we come speedily to the idea that Hashem says, I will surely eradicate the memory of Amalek, which that happens when we do our part, through the fact that Hashem commands us, you shall surely eradicate the memory of Amalek. In such a manner of the war of Hashem against Amalek from generation to generation, like we said before, says from the generation of this world prior to Mashiach's coming, and from the generation of Mashiach, and from the generation of Olam Haba, the world to come, and the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, shall come and redeem us, he should lead us upright to our land, all of this speedily in our days, Mama.